Welcome to all of you that are coming in right now. We are streaming live. We are going to wait a couple more minutes for people to come in. To all of you that are joining us on Facebook, thank you for joining us. Feel free to drop comments below as we prepare to get started on Sisters in Loss. All right. It's 1 o'clock. People are coming in. Welcome, welcome everyone. Thank you for having your taking your time out in the afternoon to have some time with us this afternoon. I want to welcome a guest. Her name is Erica McAfee, and she is with Sisters in Loss. I've been following her for some time. She is doing some groundbreaking things in her area, and I wanted to make sure that not just people in our area, but more people know about her platform and her podcast and everything that she has going on. She has a story to tell, as we all do, but I wanted to have today to take some time out for those of us that have suffered loss. It's very important to me that we all realize that we're all in this together. We are not alone. It's the biggest lie I felt like I told myself. That I was alone in dealing with infertility and the challenges that come with that. Or even if you're not trying to have a child and you're suffering with some things that affect your reproductive health, that there's things that you can do about it, and that advocacy starts with you. But for today, for this afternoon, for our lunch hour, we wanted to take some time to realize that we can hold hands and we can stand together, even though virtually, as we share a common hurt or common grief that sometimes is not visible, that sometimes goes unseen for some of us. A lot of times, the statistics say 1 in 4 pregnancies, known pregnancies, end in loss. And we don't always share that. There's a lot of people that don't realize that even if we look on this call, the number of people that are here, the number of people that are listening in, how many people have experienced it, but maybe kept it to themselves or didn't share it or don't want to talk about it. I know I've been one of those people, and the only reason I have a voice and I talk about it is because I want to help others. So if everybody can mute their mic, I want to make sure the audios don't transfer over. So all right, so with that, I would like to introduce Erica to everyone that's on the line. Erica M. McAfee is the founder of Sisters in Loss, a grief and fertility coaching company that helps Black women replace silence with storytelling around pregnancy loss and infertility. Sisters in Loss provides birth and bereavement doula services and infertility and grief coaching to help women step beyond anxiety and fear and into trust and peace. Sisters in Loss goal through courses and conferences is to help women minimize regrets, maximize memories, and manage their life after loss. Its self-entitled podcast is the first and only podcast that spotlights resilient Black mothers who share intimate details of their journey to motherhood through painful loss and infertility stories. Sisters in Loss has been featured on Black Enterprise, Women's Health, and Glamour as a resource to heal, gain clarity and peace, and find hope in life after loss and infertility. Launched in August of 2017, the podcast has a community of 10,000 plus sisters in loss. Erica is a birth and bereavement doula, grief and fertility coach, First Lady of Gaskins Chapel AME Church, and mom to 2 angels in heaven and 1 rainbow baby, Maxwell, also known as Super Mighty Max. She is an alumnus of Virginia Commonwealth University, VCU, with a BS in chemical engineering. Let us welcome Erica M. McAfee.
Thank you. Thank you for reading the entire bio, which is amazing.
I think it's important. It's important. That's important. You know, I gave a little snippet on Instagram, you know, for your post, but I wanted people to fully get the full spectrum of you and what you do and your story. I think it's important when we have people that speak and they also have a story behind it.
Yeah.
You know, pain into purpose. I think it's important for people to know and really capture all of you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. It is an honor to be with you all this happy. And I would love to share more of my story and really what sisters-in-law do. So I actually put together a few slides for you all. Keep me on track. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all so we can just talk about sisters-in-law and what we do. So as she mentioned, my name is Erica McAfee. I founded Sisters-in-Law back in August of 2017. It was just my way of from women, but more specifically Black women, because at that time, a lot of the celebrities that we know now had not really come and started to share more about their lost journeys and stories. But I wanted to make sure that our stories were heard in a way. And it led me to starting a coaching business, becoming a doula, and now I'm a doula trainer and coach. But overall, my goal is just to help women conquer grief from miscarriage, infant loss, and infertility, to strengthen their faith in God, to gain clarity and peace, and to thrive in their new normal, whatever that new normal is for them. I believe that there's really no one path to motherhood. You know, motherhood can be achieved in so many different ways, but we really have to go through that grief, that pain, that healing process to understand what it looks like to get to that other side, whatever that new normal is for you. So I want to talk about my journey to parenthood. She mentioned it in my bio, but I have 2 angels in heaven, a son, Brandon Jr., which you can see me holding in this picture for those of you who are on the phone and not on the live stream. I have a picture of me actually holding my deceased son. I was 39 weeks pregnant and I went in for an induction due to preeclampsia. So I started to show signs of high blood pressure and protein in my urine. And since I was so far along in my pregnancy, the doctors induced me. I went through about 13 hours of labor with Pitocin and pushed for a few hours, and baby boy just would not come down through my pelvis. So the doctors elected to do a C-section. After the C-section, as they were opening me up and they were pulling him out, he didn't cry. And immediately I knew something was wrong, because during that time, back in 2012, a baby story was very popular on TLC, and they always showed those episodes of baby coming out and parents are crying and tears of joy and happiness, but they never really showed the other side of pregnancy and what that really looks like, birthing a baby and the baby coming out and passing away. So my son was born not crying, and immediately the doctors and pediatricians that were in the room, I could hear them kind of frantically trying to revive and resuscitate my baby. And they worked on him for 41 minutes and he passed away. His lungs did not oxygenate. They were not fully developed. And they did, he fought as hard as he could for those 41 minutes. They were trying to work on him just to get him to breathe, but he could not catch his breath. And he went on home to be with God. And this is a picture of me in the triage room as they brought him in there and actually showed me him after they broke the news to me that he had passed away. Obviously, going almost 10 months pregnant and going through the whole labor process and pushing and then coming and actually seeing the results of this and not being able to take your baby home was completely and utterly devastating for me. I did not know what to feel. It's almost, if I remember that day, it was like an out of body experience because I could not believe that this could happen to me. You know, we are always told if we do good in this world, you know, the good will come back to us, but that's not always how it works. That's definitely not like how God works, and definitely not how faith works. But I had to learn the hard way that, you know, even though everything up until this point in my life where I had this baby that, you know, this baby that was deceased, I had to say goodbye to, I had to learn that, you know, sometimes we have to say goodbye to get to that other side. And I ended up going to, obviously, you know, we stayed in the hospital after the C-section for a few days. We ended up giving his body to a funeral home. They prepared his body and we had a funeral about a week later. And since I was so far along in my head and have an actual full maternity leave. So I was able to take that 3 months off of work, grieving and recovering, you know, physically from the C-section that I had. And one thing that I realized is that not a lot of women have that perspective, especially if you experience a loss in the first or second trimester where you immediately have to go back to work and you don't have that time to sit with your grief and sit that takes to heal. But I went on ahead and went back to work, got into counseling, couples counseling and individual counseling, and we really worked through that thing. I had to really wrestle and really question God and ask him why. Like, why me? Why God? Why did I go through this? What lessons are you trying to teach me? Are you teaching me anything? And I wrestled with that for months and months on end. God didn't answer me. I can tell you that. He still has not. But one thing I can say is that I kept moving. I kept the faith. I kept being resilient. I knew that I wanted to be a mother. I knew that I had to get the courage enough to try again. It was just ultimately up until when I know I was ready and I knew my husband was ready for us to go ahead and try again. So we went on ahead and tried again. About 8 months later, we got pregnant with a baby girl. And obviously this time the doctors were more cautious. They knew we had lost a baby boy at right at birth. So they did all the preliminary testing at the beginning of the pregnancy to make sure there was nothing, you know, genetically wrong with the baby. So we knew very early on what we were having, probably around 12 or 13 weeks, based off of all the testing that they did. But we went through that pregnancy up until 18 weeks. And 18 weeks, my cervix gave loose. I went into preterm labor. I ended up being diagnosed with cervical incompetence during this pregnancy, where my cervix was opening early due to the weight of the baby. And my baby girl, which her feet are pictured here, right here in the bottom right corner, here on my pictures that I have. And she was born. I was able to have her vaginally, obviously, because she was so small. And I went through labor and was able to push her out and hold her and watch her take her last few breaths. This is nothing that no parent wants to face, to lose a baby, a full-term baby, and then a baby in the second trimester, back to back, you know, within 8-9 months of one another, and still feel broken, still feel empty-handed, still feeling like you're not enough, feeling like your body is not capable of doing what it was created to do. I know how many of us have felt that way. And I was discouraged. I think that, you know, my first pregnancy rocked my world, but my second pregnancy definitely tested my faith, because I knew I was resilient. I knew I could try again. I knew I could get pregnant. I knew I could probably have another baby, but then my faith was questioned even more so. And I'm just like, why God? Why me? Why are you sending me through this test again, through this storm again? And what are we really trying to learn in this process? So I went back. We ended up switching therapists, switching counselors, went back into therapy as a couple and individually, just to really work on ourselves, to understand exactly what does life look like, even if we don't have children. What if we got pregnant again and that baby had issues, had a disability, or had other concerns? Would we still love the baby the same? Would we still care for the child? Life look like if we adopted, or if we chose another alternative to having children, based off of our prior experiences. So we got to a place where we were comfortable enough to try again. It took a little longer this time because I think we both had to wrestle and work through our grief and the triggers around us, not going to baby showers, not being around babies, even bypassing the baby section in some stores. I mean, we talking about a lot of things that could trigger you back to those places. And when my husband was ready, I was like, all right, let's try again. And we were able to get pregnant within a few months. And we got pregnant with our rainbow baby, which is my son, Maxwell, who I still have here on earth. But his birthing experience did not come without any trauma. I'll say that. Maxwell, with him, since we had an incompetent cervix with my second pregnancy with my baby girl I lost, we had a cerclage placed, which is a cervical stitch. They actually stitch your cervix up at 19 weeks. I was monitored by a maternal fetal medicine specialist throughout this pregnancy, just because it was so high risk from my 2 prior losses. And I went throughout that pregnancy with really not much other concern after that cerclage was placed up until about 32 weeks. And at 32 weeks, my life changed. I will say that. I was in a training session for work. I was feeling some discomfort. It was not labor, because I knew what labor felt like, but I knew I needed to at least go home and rest. I rested for an hour. I woke up in excruciating pain, and I knew I had to go into the hospital. So I went into the hospital. I got to the hospital about 1:45 in the afternoon. My son was born at 2:19. So that tells you how fast the doctors work. It was an immediate crash emergency C-section. They rolled me up to triage, hooked me up to the monitors, and they heard a very faint heartbeat with my son. So they immediately rolled me back and cut me open and took my son out. So he was born early at 32 weeks, and I lost a lot of blood. I had to get about 8 or 9 blood transfusions. I ended up almost losing my life. And about 6 hours into the doctors working on me, trying to save my uterus, trying to recover me from the blood, they came out and asked my husband to sign a waiver in order to keep me alive. They had to give me a hysterectomy, a partial hysterectomy, meaning they took my uterus in order to stop the bleeding. So at 28 years old, I was considered infertile. My husband had to sign my rights away, because obviously I was not awake and couldn't make the decision for myself. And he was like, do whatever you need to do to save my wife. So they worked on me some more, and was able to get me to a stable condition where I was in trauma ICU for about 5 days intubated. As soon as I was able to get the intubation tube out of me, the first thing I did when I woke up was ask about my son, and I don't even know if I knew everything else that happened at the time, but those are the first things out of my mouth. Where is my baby? And I was able to go in and hold him and see him. And these pictures here are of my son those first couple days in the NICU. He spent about 30 days in the NICU, about just less than a month in the NICU. He did experience oxygen loss at birth. So he has a brain injury, which results into him being diagnosed with a physical disability known as cerebral palsy. He has the most severe form of cerebral palsy, but he is the light of my world, y'all. I will not say that all of the losses, and to have a baby that I can hold and physically be here and to be able to share my story with you all is a blessing, because God is a God of second chances. And I do believe that he gave me a second chance at life and at being a mother by giving me a child, even though my child is diagnosed with a disability. But he's the light of my world, and I'm so blessed and so grateful to be able to share the story, because not a lot of women who go through a placenta abruption make it, and or their babies make it, just because of the blood loss and just the oxygen that may not be there for the baby during that process. But we're here to tell that story, and it is a blessing, and it's really what led me to start Sisters in Loss, because I'm on an infertility journey now, right? I don't have a uterus, so I can't physically carry a child anymore. I want more children. So what does that look like, you know? So back in, I want to say when Michelle Obama's book came out in November of 2018, I felt like a lot of Black women really weren't talking about miscarriages or infertility. And it's a cultural thing, right? We tell people, you know, don't tell nobody your business. Or, you know, we've heard Big Mama say, what happens in this house stays in this. So we have always been told, and like I said, it's a cultural thing, that just to keep quiet, keep our heads down, and be strong. And I think that is imperative for us to continue to share our stories and share what we've gone through, because you don't know who's on the other side of that. And that's really what continued to fuel the fire and continue the reason why I still do the podcast today. We're over 150 episodes into the podcast now, because everyone has a story to tell. And since Michelle Obama has come out, a lot of other celebrities have come out to share more about their losses, their miscarriages, their infertility journeys with us, and been more transparent about it. And I believe that that is what is going to continue to help people be bring it more mainstream, and for people to be more interested in being like, hey, I've been through that too. What was your healing journey like? How did you get to a place of understanding your grief and your pain and the things that you've gone through? And how do you come out on the other side, even if you had a child already? You know, the infertility and the grief and the loss doesn't go away. You know, what does that look like as you manage life through this? So we talk about that every week on the podcast. So I wanted to just go through just kind of what the podcast is about. So it is all about Black women replacing silence with storytelling. I started it almost 3 years ago. We stream in every country, not every country, but about 47 countries across the world. But obviously our top US cities are Atlanta, New York, Houston, DC, Baltimore, and LA. And we cover all kinds of topics on the podcast. Last year, I introduced talking about elective termination and abortion, which is something that a lot of people really don't talk about. And there's some shame and some stigma around that. But we talk about how our faith affects our losses, unexplained infertility, secondary infertility, all of the issues and diagnoses that could affect Black women's infertility, like uterine fibroids and endometriosis and polycystic ovarian syndrome. We talk about what does it look like from a male factor fertility perspective, and we'll bring the men on the podcast to talk about that. And really, what does that trauma look like? Because healing looks differently for each and every person. And sometimes it is that audible listening to people actually share their story that makes you feel like, hey, I'm not in this alone, but I want to dig more into exactly what I've been through and that place where I'm sharing more openly about what I went through. And I love interviewing women, dynamic women like each and every one of you who are on here, about your stories, because you all have a story to tell. So I want to talk about 5 reasons why we need to really normalize talking about loss. As she mentioned earlier, you know, pregnancy loss is extremely common. About 15 to 20% that equates to 1 in 4 people. And I like to say in the Black community, it's probably like 2 to 4 people, like every 2 to 4 people, you know, 1 or 2 people, you know, have had a miscarriage. They just won't share it. There's still some shame in it, and they may not have processed it. They may not really have done that work and really gone through really, what does that look like? How do I sit with it? How do I continue to live life and put one foot in front of the other with this pain of not being able to have a baby? A lot of people believe it's their fault. And when it comes to male or female factor infertility or loss, we like to point the blame at one another, but it's two people coming together, no matter what it is, two parents coming together, no matter the gender or, you know, the sex. We all have to come together to normalize talking about it. I put here that women's bodies are up for discussion for everything else. But it's true. I mean, you all know before this COVID-19 practices, and it's still actually on the docket now to even talk about Roe versus Wade and abortion rights in this country. I mean, we have birthing rights, we have reproductive rights. We want to make sure that we are the lost and infertility part of that. To lose, we shouldn't be able to get lost in that, because loss and infertility is a part of birthing and reproductive rights. We silence everything else when it comes to pregnancy loss, and we have to show the other side. Don't let the negative statistics scare you from wanting to become parents, but we can't be silenced about it any longer. And then last thing I have here is that and it just really depends on how your fertility challenges come. You know, a lot of, and I can speak to my own personal fertility challenges, that it's one step forward and 5 steps back. You know, a year ago, I went through a procedure to check my, to see where my ovaries were, since I don't have a uterus there. And it was extremely difficult for to even consider extracting my eggs to do a a round of IVF and possibly have a surrogate. So as you can imagine, I went through a lot of changes thinking about, okay, what does that look like for me now? Because I would have to have a major abdominal surgery just to even get to my ovaries if I stimulated them to get my eggs. So fertility challenge definitely influences our choices, and we really have to talk about our losses so we can understand exactly how to get to that next steps on your journey, especially if your goal is to be a parent, no matter which way it is. You know, motherhood knows no bounds when it comes to how you become a mother. So it is your voice that matters. I believe that each and every one of you here have the power to speak truth to power by sharing your story. You know, I love this quote by Toni Morrison. She said that if there's a book that you want to write, it hasn't been written, that you are the person to write it. And I always say that, you know, if you feel like there's a podcast that's not out there that you want to listen to, you're the person to start it. No different than anything else in life. So like with this conference is excellent, and it's bringing together some thought leaders in this community, talking about and amplifying their voices and their concerns and things that they are passionate about. But it's no different for you to start something in your own community that you can continue to get out and share your story and your voice and impact just one person. Because ultimately, if we're impacting one person, that one person can impact another one person, and we have impacted the entire world. So what are you going to do today to use your voice? How are you going to amplify your story in a way that is going to touch others? And if you're still on the fence about sharing, you know, what you've been through as far as loss, as far as grief, as far as infertility is concerned, sit with that some more and really think about how, what ways you can do to manage that. You know, do you need to go to a therapist or to a counselor or to talk to a coach about how you're feeling and managing your day to day? Or do you need to get in a group coaching session? Those are also beneficial as well to help you move through the way you're feeling. But ultimately, speaking truth to power, sharing your story, getting it out in the world helps bring and promote healing in a way that I that's transformational. And I will continue to say that and continue to preach that. A lot of women that come on the Sisters-in-Laws podcast always say they've never told their story in its entirety until they actually do it on the podcast. And after they're done, they're like, thank you. You know, it's almost like a relief and like a weight has been lifted from them. And they're like, oh my gosh, that is exactly what I needed to do. I needed to share it all in its entirety because it's brought this new sense of healing, this new sense of direction, this new sense of purpose in my life. And now I have this pain that's here, but now what can I do to turn that into purpose? What can I do to help another woman not feel the way I felt in that moment? What other things that I can do to move the needle forward with impacting people with just the one story or the one chapter in my life? Because there are going to be more chapters, right? And then not all stories have happy endings. So sometimes you gotta go through that pain and that dark moment to get to where that purpose lies in you, and really understand how that can impact and change the numbers that we have out there. So no matter how much education you have, no matter how much money you have, we as Black women, Black females, women of color are still 3 to 4 and 5 times more likely to die or lose our babies. So your voice matters in all of this. Your story is so important. And I would love to have each and every one of your story on the Sisters-in-Laws podcast, because I know you have a story to tell. So that is all I have for you all. I'm going to turn it back over to Deanna, and we can open it up for questions.
Awesome. Thank you so very much, Erica. I appreciate you. I appreciate your transparency, your willingness to share with this audience. And we definitely want to get Philly listed up there along with all those people that are, watching your podcast for sure. I'm going to be on that list because I saw every other city. But I don't know if a lot, people out this way know that you exist and all that you're doing. But I love everything that you touched on, and it's all the things that we've been kind of driving this whole week. So definitely I want to point out that if anybody, when you mentioned the stigma behind abortion and sometimes the guilt that we have, and how that plays into how we feel about ourselves, we think the decisions that, we try to think about all the reasons why this is happening to us. We actually had someone yesterday that was speaking about that. Nice. So definitely, guys, if you missed that, you can catch that on Facebook. Those videos are up there. I know that you mentioned therapy, strong advocate for therapy in all aspects of life. I've been on a journey of healing for the past couple of years, not just with dealing with infertility and loss, but just life. There's so many of us that walk around that need a healing, that don't do it, and then we pass that on to the next generation. So I know I've taken it upon myself just to be a better wife, mother, sister, daughter, to acknowledge things that have gone on in my past. It can be past relationships. We carry all of that.
We carry everything. Yep.
Yes, and that's also a part of it. We've talked about that. We've talked about how we, especially Black women, we carry trauma in our womb. And that can go on from before we even existed. You can take that all the way back to slavery, so we have to do our due diligence. Part of advocating for ourselves includes doing all things of healing, mind, body, spirit. So I thank you. I thank you. I know I don't want to take up too much time because I want to make sure that if there are questions on here that we're able to answer them. But I do want to just mention, for those of you that, I know for some of you, you've been following this whole week, you probably know some of my story. Like you said, it's kind of hard to tell the full. I feel like I have gotten my whole story out in different pieces. I think we've gone through so much. There's so many things, but I firmly believe everything that I went through has brought me to this point. And as we talk about turning pain into purpose, that's what the whole thing is behind Bearing Fruit, which is why I was so drawn to you, Erica, because this is directly connected to just my faith and being able to help whoever is in a dark place with this, because I've been there. I've wept and cried the agony. I can't even describe the type of tears that cause you to just be on your face and on your knees, and you don't have any words for your prayer. All you have is tears. All you have is screams. Lord, help me.
Yep.
So I for all of you that feel that, I am with you. Erica is with you. We stand with you. We share our story so that one day you will share yours. And it truly is a release. I held it in for so long until it just continued to eat at me. But I realized the moment I just released it, and the way it came out for me, like I got tired of people asking me, and someone said, and it was a family member who didn't have no problem having kids, you know, but when are you going to have kids? What's taking you so long, you know? And I just was like, I can't. It's difficult for me. And she got silent. And it was actually the first time that I didn't cry, because usually I feel like it would be projected. I could have a good day, you know, and I'm sure you guys can relate to that. You do all that you can to stay centered and be at peace, and you pray and you do all these things to hold on to your joy and hold on to your happiness. And it can take one person to like knock you off your square, you know, because you're already fighting that daily battle. But the moment someone comes up to you, and they mean well, most of the time they mean well, you know, and it was the first time that I didn't hold it in and just go and cry, because that's usually what it would be. I would hold it in, be upset inside, and walk away, and then get in my car and have a breakdown. But it was the first time I just said it, and I didn't even realize I was going to say it. And I actually went home smiling to myself, crying, but not crying out of shame for my body, but happy that it's almost like I stood up to it. I stood up to the animal of infertility, and it was the first moment I didn't allow it to define me, because it doesn't define us. This is something that we're going through, but I firmly believe that there is something about the woman that deals with infertility and loss. There are 7 women. I've been saying that all week. There's 7 women in the Bible that went before us that struggle with infertility, and there's something special about each one, and they had a purpose.
They did.
So finding your purpose. And Erica, like, would you have created Sisters in Loss had this not happened? You know, although your story is very tragic and heartbreaking, pain causes us to move. Pain causes us to do things that other people don't understand. Like some people may not understand why I'm going so hard for bearing fruit, or why, like, I literally can feel like at the end of my day, I don't mean this in a negative way, but I can feel depleted because I'm pouring all of myself into this. And the only thing that's causing me to do that is what I've gone through, and what I know I've gone through, and what I know I've come out of. And me coming out of does not equal, because I did go on to have a daughter. But that wasn't my moment of, my aha moment wasn't when I had her. It was when I was in my dark place, when Barren Fruit was born, and I realized I wanted to do this, and that I wasn't alone. And there were other women that felt the way that I felt, and that we needed to come out of it. So my daughter, just to also briefly mention, because I know you mentioned statistics, don't hold on to those statistics, because God has a whole nother set of statistics. I was not supposed to even birth a child of my own. They did not think that would happen. I suffered with a lot of different health conditions. I had to have surgery. After surgery, coming off the table, the doctors told me I had 1 tube left, and it did not work. And after a couple more tests, they were able to see that it could potentially work, but I always call it my raggedy little tube. The tube that I have left is not clear. So I was very high risk for ectopic pregnancy, so they did not want me to even try. So I had less than 1% chance of ever conceiving a child. So not even a 1%. Like, they couldn't even give me a 1% rounded up or nothing. It was less than 1%. But my daughter is now 4. So all God needed was my one raggedy little tube that they had in there. And I did not know what happened. So hold on to hope, hold on to faith, hold on to your desire for this. God knows your heart. Continue to fight. But you have to do your work. You have to advocate for yourself. And this is why I'm trying to do this week, get these speakers out here, hear people's stories. If you weren't tuned in on when we did the Black Reproductive Health Line, we had a doctor on, like, just talking about options. There's a lot of virtual options right now. So if you haven't ever got a second opinion, you need to do that and utilize this tool. Like, you don't have to just stay in this area. There are some great doctors here and in your city and here in Philadelphia, but there are some good doctors everywhere. And I do have a list of referrals. So please, please, please take advantage of this information that is going out to you. Please. Awesome. Were you about to say something?
Oh, no, great. No,
just agreeing. Okay.
So thank you for sharing that. Yes, it's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any comments, questions? I'm looking on Facebook and I'm also looking here.
Deanna, about how did you start with the podcast? And how did you decide to become a doula?
Okay. I started the podcast just out of the blue. I started it really knowing, going in the mic and my laptop, and I just started it and Googled my way through it. I did get a podcast coach probably 30 episodes in is when I got a podcast coach. And obviously having someone else who has done it before has helped me with the business side of the podcast, like advertising and getting sponsorship and things like that. So that's been beneficial. So, but Google's your best friend. It'll steer you different places. So you can use Google or you can DM me on Instagram, and then I can share with you who my podcast coach is. And then after doing the podcast for about a year, I was getting a lot of coaching clients, and I wanted to be able to support women in a different way, not just with grief coaching, but actually doing hands-on experience, because a lot of women were asking me to support them as they were going through a pregnancy after loss journey or after infertility journey. And they were like, well, Erica, I want you to walk me through this because I had an appointment, it didn't go well, and I need you to help me walk through this. So I knew I needed to go back and just do some more training. And essentially that's the reason why I became a doula. I wanted to be able to support those women who were already reaching out to me. But then on the other side, on the birth side, I wanted to be able to see and not carry all the trauma that I had personally with birthing process and be able or the birthing space. So I knew I had to really release that from me. And really, truly healing came from me when I became a doula, because I had to go into those sacred spaces and those sacred moments with the mom or the birthing person and actually say, hey, I've had a lot of trauma. There's something that was triggering me, but I need to step out and come back in to support you. So that's really when I got to a different height of healing, because I wanted to make sure they had the most positive birth experience, and I didn't bring any of that negativity into that space. So now on the other side, I just launched a cohort to train doulas in birth and bereavement, more specifically in bereavement, to support moms and dads and families as they've gone through loss. And we're talking through my training cohorts, about 20-something ladies. Really, what does that look like to support moms through loss? And how do we manage our pro-life or pro-choice, type of thought process through supporting elective terminations and abortion? So we're having a lot of good discussions about really what does that look like and how do you support families through those situations. So it's evolved over the last 2 years from just being a doula, helping other doulas, and now being a doula trainer for me. It's been a blessing overall, because I would not be doing this work
think it froze. I'm not sure if Erica's still speaking or not. It looks like her computer froze a little bit. But while we figure that out, I do appreciate your comment, Brittany. I see it. You said that you used an opportunity to share a piece of your story. I think definitely using more opportunities like that. I think the more we take back our power, I even, I started to, instead of getting angry and lashing out or not saying anything, using that opportunity to tell a piece of your story. Or if somebody says, I really can't wait, we'll pray about it. Is it echoing for you guys too?
Yes.
I'm not sure why. Does somebody else have their, maybe if everyone turns off their mic, maybe that's what it is. Erica, you froze, so that's why I started talking. So I wasn't sure if you were done or not. Yeah, the computer froze.
I was like, what happened?
Yeah. So we didn't
I don't know what I was
end.
saying. Oh, my bad. I didn't know. I don't know what I was saying, but I think I was saying overall, sharing my story has turned into advocacy work for me. It has allowed me to be in front of senators and congressmen and really push legislative agendas on a national stage that I would have never thought I would have had the opportunity to do. So back in February, I had the opportunity to go to the State of the Union with my local congressman as his guest. Even with the president that was there, it was still good to be in the room. Health disparities amongst Black women and women of color is something I'm extremely passionate about, and really to be able to have an advocate there and be amongst like the Black caucus and understand exactly what their agenda is imperative to continue to shift this narrative, continue to reduce these numbers, and sharing your story is a huge part of it, y'all. And I'm honored to continue to do this work.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. So very much. That's awesome. I would love to continue to connect with you because we also have something that has been developed up here that I'm a founding member of, which is the Maternal Wellness Village, where we have been trying to fight for different rights centered around infertility, maternal mental health, maternal health. We just came off a Black Maternal Health Week last week. So we had events going on all last week as well. So April is a hot month. There's a lot going on, but we can't stop. We have to keep pushing. I'm probably going to collapse next week, but then I'm gonna pick it right back up again because we also have monthly support group. So anybody that, in addition to the podcast that Erica provides, if anybody also just wants additional like monthly support, right now we are meeting virtually every month. I'm going to check the chat box one more time to see if there's any more additional comments in there. Erica, can you talk about bereavement training?
Yes, or just being a bereavement doula, is that what they're asking, or just training in general?
Or the training process, or what exactly that entails?
Yeah, so the training that I'm doing is a birth and bereavement doula training and certification. It's a 6-week virtual course where you will learn how to be a birth doula, how to do bereavement, and then you'll also learn how to really go out and start a doula business, be certified to be a doula and focus on birth and bereavement. The training really goes into detail around the birthing process, but also medical support, non-medical support. What does grief, loss, and healing look like on all of the different kinds of loss, including elective termination and abortion? And then how do we support moms and families and birthing persons in that postpartum state to make sure they have the welcoming, they have the farewell with the baby, and they have that hope and healing after that. So it's a 6-week course that I will be launching again in June, and you all definitely follow me. You'll see more information about it. but if anybody's interested in it. There are a lot of other birth and bereavement courses that are out there. If you would just type in birth and bereavement doula training. I would say the difference with Sisters in Loss is just that it's more holistic and through, and what we can do in rural and urban communities to make sure we reach the people we need to reach. So it's kind of for us by us kind of thing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Can I be emailed to join the support? Of course. Yes. Thank you for dropping that email in there. I should also get it. I will add you to, I'll put that in the, when I send thank yous out to everybody that attended today. I'll make sure that you have the link if you want to join in on that support group. And Erica, if you can send me the best way for people to, if they want to join the podcast, that would be great, because I can put that in the email as well. So that would be awesome. I think that's it. All right. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about male infertility. And how that affects us. I think also a part of that conversation should be, even if it's not male infertility, like the male still goes through something along with us. So I encourage you to, if you do have a significant other, I encourage you to include them on this. Like, they need to hear this. They need to know what you're going through. I think that was also a big thing for me, that I not only kept it from talking to people, but I didn't even talk to my spouse. I mean, he knew we went through a miscarriage together, and we went through the process of trying to get pregnant for 5 years and not happening. It affected us differently, but I think it helped when I finally talked to him. You know, sometimes we assume that they know and understand because they're right there, but we're just different. Men and women are just different. We operate different, we think different, and men go through a different kind of process that also, like I feel like the miscarriage, I'm very affected by it, but it affects my husband as well in a different kind of way that I didn't realize until we began to talk about it. So I encourage that. And then also Saturday, we will be doing Afro beats, aerobics, as a way to celebrate our wombs. I know we've been having some really tough conversations all week. And I think we need to embrace our bodies. Whatever state that we're in, we need to find joy in our hearts, and we need to celebrate ourselves no matter where we are. So Saturday is going to be about that, celebrating ourselves and having a little bit of fun and getting a little bit of exercise, which also boosts fertility. So all of the above. So if you have not registered for tomorrow and Saturday, please do. And I will make sure to drop in all the information for Erica, including how you can follow her if you're not already, so that you can stay connected with her and the resources that she provides. All right. Thank you all. Thank you for everybody on Facebook listening in. Thank you for all those that joined the Zoom call. If you know of a friend that could really benefit from this, tag them in, bring them with you next time. All right. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of your day.